As we begin our journey into 3D Vectorworks, I'd like to take just a moment to talk about some of the other popular 3D design programs and how Vectorworks fits into that group. There literally are hundreds of computer programs that deal with some aspect of 3D modeling, lighting, rendering, or documentation, but there definitely are a group of key players that you're likely to encounter while working in live entertainment design. Those include Maya, Blender, 3D Studio Max, SketchUp, Revit, Vectorworks, and AutoCAD. Within these programs, there are a couple of different approaches as to how 3D objects are thought of within the program and how you can interact with and manipulate them. Different people have different names for these approaches, but I like to think of them this way. Maya, Blender, and 3D Studio Max are mesh modelers. Revit, Vectorworks, and AutoCAD are solid modelers, and SketchUp is its own unique blend that ultimately really is a mesh modeler but emulates some of the properties of solid modelers. So what does this mean? It means that in mesh modeling, objects are thought of as having a surface made of a flexible mesh. This gives you the ability to go into the mesh, grab individual points, and move them around in order to reshape the mesh. In solid modeling, objects are thought of as solids rather than meshes. This doesn't mean that you can't reshape them, it just means that you have to think of them as solids and ask yourself how you would reshape a solid as opposed to reshaping a flexible mesh. Just to confuse things a little bit, this doesn't mean that meshes can't define solids, they can. And ultimately, under the hood of solid modeling programs, the objects really are meshes. You just can't get at them the way you can in mesh modeling programs. So what does all that mean? Basically this: for any given project, you might need to use multiple programs in order to achieve your final result. You just have to understand which objects are best suited for which programs and choose accordingly. For instance, organic objects like this character are not well suited to solid modeling programs. Mesh modelers are much better suited to things like characters and other organic shapes. Projects which have an architectural basis, on the other hand, are very well suited to solid modelers like Vectorworks. All of the elements of this model of Spice World 2019 were created in Vectorworks except for the people. The people were created in a mesh modeler and then imported into the Vectorworks model. This particular model is by the artist Evan Alexander, who specializes in creating Vectorworks models and renderings for designers of large-scale events. Check out his website at evanalexander.com for some examples of amazing Vectorworks models. So why Vectorworks? How did Vectorworks become popular with theater designers? It all started with lighting designers. Years ago, lighting designers discovered that Vectorworks hybrid symbols, which is something we'll talk about in a later video, were very useful in creating light plots. And as more designers began to use Vectorworks to create light plots, Vectorworks began integrating more and more theatrical lighting tools into the program. As it became increasingly popular with lighting designers, it started to catch on with scenic designers. And as that happened, Vectorworks started adding more entertainment-specific tools to the program. While Vectorworks is certainly not the only program that's used in entertainment design, for instance, AutoCAD is still very popular with technical directors, it is one of the few programs that has entertainment industry-specific tools built in, and that's one of the reasons that it's so popular. So let's take a look at some projects that I've done in Vectorworks over the past several years and use them to illustrate some of the ways you can use the program. This is a model of the set for UCF's production of Titanic the Musical. This image illustrates the base model. This next image shows adding texture and color to the model. And then finally, theatrical lighting and haze effects were added to create a final rendered image. This image shows how Vectorworks was used to emulate a more traditional media hand-drawn rendering for the set for A Doll's House Part 2 at Florida Rep. Vectorworks was also used to illustrate the LED lighting effects that were built into the set, as well as the projections, which were used to set this 2019 contemporary sequel apart from its Victorian predecessor. This model of native gardens for Orlando Shakespeare shows how within Vectorworks you can combine three-dimensional architecture and two-dimensional image props, i.e. all of the foliage, in order to create one cohesive look. I used Vectorworks to quickly illustrate a series of different design ideas during the preliminary design phase of Becoming Dr. Ruth at Orlando Shakes, and then created a realistically modeled and lit version of the final design. I should note here that the actual set was designed to look like a full-scale white model with realistically colored furniture downstage, in case you're wondering about the realism of the model. This next model is of the set for the musical Anything Goes, which takes place aboard a 1930s ocean liner. The venue for this production was North Shore Music Theater, just north of Boston, which is a 1,500-seat arena stage, which means this production was performed in the round, in case you're wondering where the rest of the scenery is. The model for this set was used to not only generate the renderings to show what the set would look like, but also to generate the design drawings which were sent to the shop for construction. When you're ready to create the design drawings for the show, you simply set up orthographic views of the 3D model pieces and then annotate those views with notes and dimensions rather than having to redraw objects. When you're working in the round, because often there isn't a lot of scenery, the props and furniture elements become very important. Elements like the chandeliers, this bar, actually all of the furniture in the show was custom built for this production and so was designed in Vectorworks in 3D, and then drawings were generated from those 3D models. Finally, I thought it might be instructive to take a look at the 3D model progression and workflow through an entire show from the beginning to end. So this is the Vectorworks process for Henry IV Part 1 at the Orlando Shakespeare Theater. After discussing broad concepts in the first design meeting, in the second design meeting we started discussing the multiple locations that are in the script and how the set might help tell this story. I had a very general idea about a set that would somehow perhaps turn and reconfigure itself using levels and stairs, and so during the meeting on the laptop I was able to really quickly generate this 3D model of that basic idea to generate discussion with the rest of the team. That seemed to go well, so the next step was to take that model and put it in a model of the actual theater space so that we could look and see, just in terms of proportion, how this idea might work in the actual space. After that came looking at how the rest of the space might be designed in order to incorporate the initial turntable idea. The next iteration was an overall refinement of the look, and then the incorporation of the idea of extending the set out into the auditorium to include more of the audience in the world of the play. As I continued to refine the overall look, at this point I started adding and incorporating colors and textures into the model so we could really start getting a feeling for what our world might look like. Next, I used a plugin called Animation Works to create an animation of the turntable in motion so that the director and I could discuss specific moments in the play and where the turntable might be stopped in those moments. At this point, I also generated final renderings from the model and also created plans for the shops using the same method that I used for the Anything Goes plans. Finally, the Vectorworks model was exported to Vectorworks Vision, which is a lighting pre-visualization program which allows you to simulate the actual lights in the space and hook a light board up to the computer and program light cues, and also program the scenery to move so that you can really get an idea of what the final product is going to look like. So this was the final step in the process. I should mention at this point that while we will discuss this semester modeling, texturing, lighting, rendering, and plan creation. We will not get into animation or lighting pre-visualization. Those are both subjects that are outside the scope of this course. So now that we've looked at what Vectorworks does and what you can do with it, we'll delve into the program itself. Up next, setting up Vectorworks for use in this course.